Mini episode 593 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by First Down Scouting, delivering the most thorough scouting service available, uncovering the NFL stars of tomorrow. Follow them on the web at the number 1stdownscouting.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everybody. Rick Morris, Kyle Ross, your FDH Lounge dignitaries. We have previewed the AFC previously. We're now taking a look at the NFC in 2015. And again, we did a little bit of an overall macro picture for the NFL when we were doing the AFC one. From my perspective, just to extend it a little further into the NFC, as I have said, I expect this to be a year of breaking the glass ceiling a little bit, if you will. I do expect that there will be some new faces going far in the playoffs this year, and I'm taking all these things together.
Weird.
Questions about Peyton Manning, the Tom Brady suspension at the start of the year, Jordy Nelson's gone for the year, the Seattle secondary with a lot of flux right now, injuries/holdout. I'm taking that as a big sign, a divine sign, if you will, but that this era of stability in the NFL at the upper reaches is over. That's how I'm looking at it. I had to go outside the big two in the NFC. I
don't know why you chose to do. Why you're choosing to do that?
Because well, here's the thing, too.
I guess I see why.
Under normal circumstances, and here's the weird thing, it's just always about whatever else is going on. But in a vacuum, we've seen this happen many times in sports. Now, granted, the funny thing is I can think of an instance that disproved this very recently with the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. But a lot of times, Green Bay and Seattle both ended their seasons in largely self-imposed heartbreak. When that happens, the next year can always be really, really iffy. Now, we looked at it coming into this year like, well, by default, it's got to be one of those two.
I didn't talk like that, though, when I broke it down.
Well,
I'd like to point that
that's
out.
what I think of that opinion, because I'm going outside of the big two in the NFC.
Congratulations.
Yeah, go ahead. But you're staying within you're staying hidebound to tradition, like the good big government liberal that you are.
It makes no sense. You're the one who's being liberal in this sense, not me. I'm the strict constructionalist here. Ford has written Seattle and Green Bay, so it shall be done. Was that the Constitution, or is that just what you wanted to say in the Constitution? I forget. Anyway, the NFC I struggled with a lot more than the AFC. The AFC, if you listen to that last mini episode I said before, I felt really confident in my picks. With the NFC, I can see myself, and I don't know who the team is, because if I did, then I would just downgrade their win total right now and be right about it. There's somebody who I'm too high on. I don't know who it is, or maybe it's a collective group of teams I'm too high on. But to me,
Big Blue, I'm going to go out on a limb.
Okay, well, we'll get to them. There's a few teams you're too high on, too, as far as I'm concerned.
There's a blue team that I'm not too high on.
Okay. Well, as you meant, Seattle and Green Bay are clearly on paper the class of this conference.
Yep.
And there's a couple teams that don't look so hot. But other than that, like, 3/4 of this conference, I could do a best case, worst case scenario for all of them where they have huge, pretty big ranges in potential win totals. The AFC, a lot of them, like with the Jets, I was like, they're going to win 7 games. I feel very comfortable with that number, or it'll be this number or that number. This conference, there are teams whose win range I can see varying by 4.
Yes.
And there's multiple teams that can do that. So, I did do a little flip-flopping late in the game with this, which can be deadly, but I think I'm going to be better off for it, and away we go. And I was worried that after doing the AFC, just take people behind the curtain here, we're doing these in the same days, that we'd slow down, fatigue would set in here to start the NFC, and then you told me what you thought of these damn Arizona Cardinals, and I am so ready to go on this little podcast that I just want to let you start. That I cannot. Okay. I thought by year's end, I had finally convinced you what a smoke and mirrors outfit the Arizona Cardinals were. And here you are.
Every season exists in a vacuum, Kyle Ross.
Here you
and
are.
in 2015, if I'm going to look at this, I'm just going to lead with the outrageous statement that will set the tone for our entire 2015 NFC preview in the FDH Lounge. The Arizona Cardinals, the first team that we are doing alphabetically here in the NFC, will, by season's end, be the first team in the NFC West. And I'll just say it right now. We'll get to the playoffs later on.
Dude.
The team coming out of the NFC, your Arizona Cardinals, the 2015 NFC champions, on the simple pretext of this. If it's not going to be Seattle or Green Bay, and I know you're saying, why does it have to be? Well, it just does. It just does.
It does?
It just does.
That's odd.
Well, that's going with my theory here that the new blood are breaking through. You can keep your FUNB T-shirt, Kyle Ross, but it's time for the new blood. And if I'm going to make a case for anybody else, because it feels too easy and too pat. And you know what? I'd rather be the guy that goes with somebody else 5 minutes early than 5 minutes later when everybody else is doing that.
Hipster move, but
That's
okay.
I'm the one that picked Arizona when nobody else did. I'll say that. Every case that you make for them, largely, I think, is true, particularly if we're going to be a slave to things like statistics.
Yes.
But
numbers, that's such a terrible part. That's a
And I must admit, as a Browns fan, any defense that boasts Frosty Rucker starting at one of the defensive tackle spots is inherently suspect.
This defense is not going to be as good as it was last year for a multitude of reasons. One of them is they lost Todd Bowles, their coordinator.
But I think they made a good replacement there. They're going to keep a very similar scheme. Patrick Peterson's bound to have a better year than he did a year ago. He had an off year by his standards, and the team still won 11 games. He's a real difference maker.
That front seven is going to be
I think they're going to be
bad.
decent. I think Campbell's still got some left in the tank here. Lamar Woodley joins the team for a little bit of a burst off the corner from time to time here for whatever he's got left. It's not a great front seven on paper, but again, at a certain point in time, as much as I like to troll you with winning as a skill, there have been 3 strong years in a row for Bruce Arians. When he took over in Indianapolis,
Yep.
when they should have gone in the crapper, when Chuck Pagano went down. I mean, it's one thing for a team to be fired up to play for a sick coach, but he really deserved to be coach of the year that year in Indianapolis, then moved on to Arizona. Nobody expected the last 2 years for this to be what it was. You were at this time a year ago tooling on Arizona.
I crushed them.
And you said every dumb guy at the Labor Day barbecue is telling you, who's going to be the surprise of this season? The Arizona Cardinals. And the dumb guy at the barbecue was right. In 2015, Kyle Ross, I'm not betting against the dumb guy at the barbecue. Carson Palmer should be back for an entire season.
What does that mean?
Brown, Floyd, and Fitzgerald, a decent enough receiving core. Between Ellington and Johnson, I think decent enough production at running back. Ellington, if he can only stay healthy, and obviously I'm forecasting that he will stay healthy, a real difference maker here for them. A guy
I don't know about that.
A guy who can be
You are real optimistic
here, man. A guy
here,
who can be their Brian Westbrook if he stays healthy. No question about it. The Arizona Cardinals, like I said, I'm not just picking them to make the playoffs. I'm picking them, as far as the NFC goes, to win the whole darn thing and to be in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 50, it will be the Cardinals and the Chargers. The 50th Super Bowl.
You should just bet on that. You should find a place to bet on because you could get unbelievable odds on that matchup. It may not even be on the board.
For a historical Super Bowl, Super Bowl 50, it will match teams that have been there or combined 2 times. Choke on that, slap nuts.
Where to begin? The Arizona Cardinals win total in Vegas is 8.5. So, again, they are predicting regression. Of course, we all, as you so eloquently pointed out, were predicting regression at this time last year. And that regression did not happen. They actually won one game more than they did in 2013. I know that perhaps people of your ilk, or people that like to go to Labor Day barbecues at least, don't like to hear these things. But I'm going to make a comment. I'm going to make a comment right now.
Okay.
The team that won 10 games in 2013 was better than the team last year.
I would agree.
Okay. So I think that 2 years of overperforming expectations. Last year they overperformed way more. And I know that a case can be made that they had to turn to Ryan Lindley at quarterback. So you're like, well, they're not going to have Ryan Lindley in there, so they should be better. Well, I think that's simplifying things too much. I don't think the return of if you're banking your season on the return of Carson Palmer, that's frightening. He's old, and I don't think he has much left in the tank. The defense is going to be worse.
I'd say he's in that above-average Mike Sanders range.
He is. I would have him below both Andy Dalton and Alex Smith.
Not by much in my estimation.
No, they're in the same tier, but I
Yeah.
mean, they're in the tier of boring white guy name quarterbacks. So, they were the number one overachiever in Pythagorean wins last year. They had the Pythagorean win expectation of 8.3. I know you can't win 3/10 of a game, but I'm sure Bruce Arians can figure out a way how to, just to annoy me. They won 11. So the numbers indicate regression here. They indicated regression last year, and I admit it, I was wrong.
And I am a regression to the mean guy. You would not expect me to be on Arizona.
Here's what's funny is when I was doing the thing that you were doing about penciling in win totals and comparing it to last year, I have too many wins this year.
Okay.
Particularly in the NFC. I have the NFC having 5 more wins than they did last year, with the AFC having 2 more.
Just cheat and put a bad team down for 0-16.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pick what I do, and I'm just going to be wrong on a team, and that's fine. I'd rather be wrong on 1 than wrong on 3 or something like that. I'm predicting this is going to be our biggest difference. You have Arizona 11-5 in the Super Bowl. I have them 7-9.
7-9. Wow.
I think this team is
faith.
absolutely worse across the board this year. They are absolutely the only argument, and it's an argument that
can't possibly include Patrick Peterson, who is going to have a bounce back year and who is a difference maker. Kyle Ross.
Yeah, I'll give you the Peterson thing, but I think everywhere else, I'm not impressed by the Iupati signing along the offensive line. I think he's a little overrated.
Yeah, I think it'll help.
I'm not counting on full years of health from Andre Ellington, and oh, by the way, I'm not going to count on a full year of health from Carson Palmer. He's old.
To tie Iupati back into it, I think the protection's going to be a little better.
Yeah, but he's better as a run blocker.
True.
Than as a pass protector.
But that will help Andre Ellington achieve his full potential as a potentially 5
I don't
yards
think
per carry running back.
I think that you're the only argument, and it's an argument that I just won't ever buy into. You talk about people being stubborn and things, is that Bruce Arians just has some otherworldly ability to outperform expectations every year. That there is something under that hat of his. And if it is, then God bless him. But I'm not going to put stock in that. I think Arizona, look, every year there's teams that regress out of the playoffs. And I don't have a ton of turnover in the AFC. I do have 2 new playoff teams, if you recall back to that podcast, Miami and Kansas City. So I think
I remember the day we cut that one.
Yes, okay. So I have to have at least 3 out in the NFC.
Right.
And when I look at them, Arizona, to me, is a team that fits the bill.
All right.
One of the 10 largest differences between Pythagorean and actual win totals since 1990, Arizona last year.
Well, obviously, I expect I think they will probably still outperform the Pythagorean win total this year, but I think their
unless if you think they're going to just destroy everyone in every game and lose a couple.
Well, exactly. I think that again, their actual performance I think is going to be better than it was last year. I have them at 11 wins. Moving now, and it's a string of successes here at the top of the alphabet here in the NFC. In the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, 6-10 a year ago, a very near miss on making the playoffs. Let's go inside. Let's not give them a pass on that. Yeah.
It was a gutless no-show not making the playoffs.
It was.
That cost Mike Smith his job when they were absolutely embarrassed at home by the Carolina Panthers.
Although weeks earlier, my Cleveland Browns with that fluky win over them, that also was a one.
And there was that
win.
Detroit game too, where Mike
That's
Smith,
true.
your boy, got stuck in the paper bag again.
It
was time for him to go.
Think on balance,
it was
he
time
was
for him to go.
Most successful coach in franchise history, no question about it. I think he's deserving of another look elsewhere.
Oh, I'm not saying. I just think the time it was one of those things, that I can't give you a hard, fast rule about it, but
right.
I just think that they had kind of been stuck in quicksand.
Right.
2 years in a row, no playoffs after. Yeah, they were overachievers though when they had good records. Though those 13-3 seasons they had and stuff.
Any year you got a quarterback like Matty Ice.
Matt Ryan is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in this league.
Yes.
Not one of the top. Not a top 5 guy. I don't think there's an argument for him to be in the top 5. But he's a very good quarterback.
Not yet. I don't rule it out at some point.
I'll say this. Opposite of Arizona this year. Arizona, Vegas is calling for regression.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta, they're calling for improvement. They
Okay.
are now after 8.5 is the win total this
Okay.
year for a team that won 6 games last year.
Here's something you're not going to hear too many times. I'm picking the under, but I'm picking them to win the division.
Well,
because I think the division
that's-
is still going to stink.
That's
They're gonna
not
win.
without precedent.
Yeah, they're
Carolina last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember? Carolina
Yeah.
was the same thing. I won my under bet on them, so they're going to
Yeah.
be one of the biggest regressors in the league, and then they inexplicably won the division.
Yeah,
There's precedent there.
And the biggest donut hole season I've ever seen. They started out like a house of fire, did nothing for like 10 weeks, and then finished strong. You know, I compared that last year, you know, to back in my regular days of bowling, to only like 240, 140, 240. That's basically what their season was like. I mean, that season was inexplicable the way that it went, the progression of it. I've never seen
Remember,
a
I
year
cashed
like
my
that.
win total bet in
Yeah.
like week 12.
Yeah.
And I was like, remember they were like whatever they were, 2-7, 2-9 and 2-8-1 or whatever
Yeah.
it was. And yeah, and then they that's fine. But anyway, back to Arizona. By the way, I always like to look at late season schedule
Okay.
with Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, they close with Green Bay and Seattle, so you better hope that the big two
Fortunately,
aren't as
I
good.
think they can beat both of them.
Jesus Christ, you're insane.
They won't beat both, but
They're
they'll
both
s-
at home.
They'll
They're both
split.
at home.
They'll split.
They're both at home. I want to. So maybe they could.
Spoiler alert: it's not the it won't be the last time they beat Green Bay at home through the course of this season.
I am nauseous at what I'm hearing. Now you want to talk about the schedule? The Atlanta Falcons, a
Yeah.
team that you have stumped for much harder than I in the past.
Yes.
I have not been a big fan of
You
this
seem
team.
to consider them a hipster favorite for some reason.
Yeah, they kind of were because I just never thought that they were as good as their record those years
Okay.
under Mike Smith. I never did. Now, what's interesting is I don't think they were as bad as they were the last 2 years, and I'm calling for definite improvement. I'm actually going to call for 10. I'm also calling for them to win this division.
Okay.
This is a team that I changed on.
Okay.
They were clearly going to improve. It's a question of how much. I see their window as 7 to 10 wins. So the 8.5 is a good number. I'm going to go 10. They
All
have
right.
by Football Outsiders measurement, they have the easiest schedule in the league. And
That'll
that's huge. They not only play their own division, which is bad, but is going to be better this year, but they play the heinous AFC South.
Ooh.
And they get Indy at home.
Wow.
Where they're very good at the Georgia
You're making
Dome.
me second guess 8 and 8 because
Yeah,
all those factors could see it go higher. By the way, too, I was never as low on Mike Smith as you were. Having said that, I have been for a while a big Dan Quinn guy. That's going to pay off for them.
Now,
They're in very good hands.
It hasn't worked out with Gus Bradley in Jacksonville, his predecessors,
Yeah.
the DC and Seattle.
Yeah.
But
Well, you got to have the talent at the end of the day.
Quinn is inheriting a much better offense, first of all. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, this guy's got to be doing cartwheels after the manure at quarterback he's had to work with the last couple of years.
He is a backstabber, though. You're likely to get a PowerPoint slideshow from him at the end of the year on why he should be let out of his contract. So
well,
there's
I mean, they're
poison in the clubhouse.
Well, I mean, he can't be any worse than Bobby Petrino, can he? I mean, Arthur Blake's like, hey, give me your PowerPoint, buddy. Okay, I only got a text message the last time. The offense. So initially, when I thought about Atlanta, I didn't think the improvement would be that much because I think Quinn has a lot of work to do with this defense. But as we know from last year with Dallas, defense will fluctuate far more than offense year to year.
Yeah.
That's something that in my trusty Football Outsiders Almanac they always harp, and it's very true. I've come to believe it as well. We know the offense will be pretty good with Matt Ryan throwing the ball to Julio Jones. I kind of like what they're doing at running back. You know, the Steven Jackson experiment, that was stupid.
Right.
And over-the-hill running back, that was let's get some young guys in.
Right.
Freeman and Tevin Coleman, who they drafted out of Indiana. You know, not a noted football program, but he's a good player.
Good player. And my big fantasy sleeper of a year ago who didn't get a chance to do much, but it seemed like every time the ball was in his hands made big plays, Antone Smith. That's a dangerous guy for when he makes it in
And
there.
the line, there's some questions. Bruce Matthews was not the reliable cog they were hoping, at least in his first year. And did I say Bruce Matthews?
You
Because
did.
he has actually been gone out of the league for some time.
Jake Matthews.
Jake Matthews,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Okay.
At least I didn't say Clay Matthews. But the more I thought about it is Quinn does have some pieces to work with on defense.
Right.
Desmond Trufant, I think, is going to take a big step up in
Right.
corner this year. He's going to be one of the better corners. I loved the pick of Vic Beasley.
Vic Beasley,
That
yes.
was
Off the edge,
They have
yeah.
not gotten a pass rush quite frankly, since Clay Matthews was in the league, I think.
Right.
So that'll be better. So the defense will improve because, I mean, how can it not?
The only thing I don't
the
understand.
defense was one of the worst defenses in the league last year, so it's going to improve.
Right. Now, never mind what he played in college, because I'm looking at this now, and they have, and I trust, and this is on the FDH Lounge Ultimate Links page. We have the links on there for CBS Sports for all the depth charts, because that's the one that I trust the most. Vic Beasley listed at left defensive end in a 3-4. Kind of question that at 6'3", 246. My only question there.
Some people have issues with him in certain schemes, so it's going to be interesting. But I think
keep an eye on that.
Yeah. But if the defense can at least get to middle of the road,
then
then
Quinn won't misuse him. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, if this team can get to middle of the road defensively, the schedule's there, then they can get to 10 wins.
Right.
I think that's a bounce back. Even though I think across the board, a lot of the teams in this division are poised to bounce back. I just think it's a question of the schedule and the fact that the defense is just bound to improve. I think that's what it boils down to.
All right,
Atlanta.
so we do at least agree on one division winner of the first two teams alphabetically in the NFC then.
Yes, although I like Atlanta a little more, which is surprising.
Okay, yeah. Usually the shoe is on the other.
They close with Carolina. They close at Jacksonville, and then home games against Carolina and New Orleans. Should be able to sweep those out to take the division.
All winnable, no question about it. One of those teams there, of course, the team that took the NFC South from them in the last week of the season last year, to Carolina Panthers, 7-8-1 a year ago.
I want to have more fun with numbers. I can't believe
I
didn't do this. So this was what worried me about Atlanta. They were 5-1 in division games last year and didn't win the division. That's kind of rare.
Yeah.
It would be tough for them to match that 5-1 division record. But guess what? Let's do some simple math, Richard Z. Morris. They were 1-9 against every team not in the NFC South. Yeah. They've got to improve on that, and I think because that's a large.
You already enumerated the softness of the schedule outside the division.
There's 10 games there, so there's more room to grow than there is to decline in the division record.
Yeah.
So I realize 10 seems like probably the high watermark for them.
But it's achievable. You've laid it out, and it's very achievable.
It's a 9 or 10 win team, I think, and I'm going over 8.5 for the Falcons. I'm sorry.
No problem. Good point there.
Because you said Carolina, I was like, God, there's something I want to bring up with Atlanta, and I can't remember it.
Carolina, I have only had a half-game fall-off this year, 7-9. That would, of course, be enough to keep them out of the playoffs.
They were 7-8-1 last year. Very lucky to get that tie.
They were.
When your boy Nuge missed that field goal.
Oddly enough, I mean, it feels like, because that's about where I had them slotted before the catastrophic injury to Kelvin Benjamin. But I actually didn't end up making an adjustment at all.
Is it that catastrophic? I don't think Kelvin Benjamin is all he's cracked up to be.
I don't either, and here's the thing. I want to
Nor do I like the pick of Devin Funchess, and I'm a man who spends a lot of Saturday afternoons with his eyes on Ann Arbor.
Yeah, their wide receiving core is brutal, but, as Cam Newton has proven in the past, now he's usually had at least one go-to guy with Benjamin or Smith, but he's managed to make it happen without much there in the past. The thing about Benjamin, I agree with you, and that's a guy that I had slotted as, if not a fantasy bust this year, at least somebody that was going to be an underachiever relative to expectations. Something that I just added to the FantasyDraftHelp.com draft board this year I'd never had on in the past was, because what I don't like, I don't like all these dweebs out there. Targets. It's the biggest pseudo-intellectual crap.
Oh, I
there.
like
people
targets.
Targets. What does it mean? It's all rear view mirror stuff. It depends on who was covering them last week, what the scheme was. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell you anything about how a team is going to approach this week. Total rear view mirror thinking.
Oh, I disagree completely.
Pseudo-intellectual crap. Now,
your republicanism showing through here.
What I did decide to do.
It's almost as bad as when you got mad at me for not liking the 1998 Royal Rumble and said, "Oh, you just want to have your checkbox." I'm like, "Is that what we're doing?"
Well, I put target completion percentage on the draft board because I thought that at least meant something. Kelvin Benjamin got a lot of targets, and I'll admit I didn't know going in what a good number was going to be or a bad number. Good number, it turns out, is somewhere mid-60s to higher. Kenny Stills is somebody like better than 70% on the target completion.
Which is kind of odd. That's higher than you think.
But here's the
probably
thing.
More than, again, stats are always contextual.
Kelvin Benjamin, and this is why I remember it, exactly 50%. He had a lot of catches last year only because he had a lot of targets. There were a lot of incompletions or interceptions, but Newton wasn't horrible in interceptions. There were a lot of passes thrown to Benjamin that he didn't get. So it's easy to overrate the how bad it's going to be without him in there. Having said that, their receiving core is brutal.
Their offensive line stinks.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Stewart. I am actually, it's a hipster pick for this year, but I do think he is going to be a guy who can stay healthy and get things done. Defensively, again, they did a weird job in drafting this year. They didn't really try to fill their holes as much.
They got good linebackers, but they're weak in front of them and weak behind them.
Kuechly is an incredible player, one of the big difference makers in the league. 7 and 9 seems hard to justify because they look more like a 4 or 5 win team to me. But Cam Newton is sort of the Bruce Arians of quarterbacks. Just like somehow or another that he gets.
He's
the
better
job
than
done.
he's given credit for because he has not had a lot of talent around
That's
him
what I'm
since
saying.
coming aboard.
He elevates them the same way that Bruce Arians elevates the Arizona Cardinals. He's going to elevate them right to 7 wins, which is not great, but it's not
what they won last year.
Well, yeah,
and that was good enough for a division title.
Yeah, it won't be this year. But yeah.
I agree with you on all fronts. Vegas has them at 8.5. I love the under here.
Boy.
Because 8 seems like their high watermark. So
that's the easiest under that I've heard so far.
Not as easy as the Browns. But
what was the Browns again? 5.5?
6.5.
Oh, yeah.
It might be down. You know what? It might be down to 6.
Second to the
Browns. It might be down to 6.
The Browns would still be an easier one.
Yeah. It is down to 6, the Browns.
Okay.
But anyway, back to Carolina. And boy, do I mean back to Carolina. Because let's talk about last year.
Yeah.
They, along with Arizona, were my 2 big regression candidates last year.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them made the playoffs, which, probably makes the listers right saying, wow, this guy's pretty stupid. But, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, they did regress. Carolina.
Yeah.
Unlike Arizona did not regress. Carolina did regress. They went from 12 wins to 7 wins last year and won a historically bad division. At one point, they were 3. Pardon me. I said it was 2-8-1. They were 3-8-1, and then they ran off 4 wins in a row. All 3 of them were division games, and 1 was at home against the Browns.
Yep.
So not that impressive, really. Close games. They won 1-2, 2-0-1, 2-1-1. Real time again, buddy. 2-2-1, 4-2-1. So there was a little bit of fortune there. But here's what I want to get to with them. You've kind of noticed this in recent years. I hadn't even. Shame on me because it was my picks. That every year there's a team that I'm like, I just don't know about this team.
Right.
And I kind of like, well, this just feels kind of, this has been where they're at. This is where I'm going to pick. And it feels sort of like a ceiling pick, and they always drop below. Last year it was Tennessee.
Yep.
2 years ago it was Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I think the Giants a few years were maybe in that or something.
You're
I can't
dooming them if you say this is your team.
Yeah,
this
it's
year.
Carolina this year. I feel that 8 wins, this is what makes the under good.
8
because
wins would be a nosebleed.
There would be, that's their high water because they did drop from 12 to 7. So
by the way, you talk about gains of 4, losses of 4. When's the last time a team ever dropped more than 4 games below the previous season and still made the playoffs?
It's been a while. By the way, there is precedent for dropping big 2 years in a row. This team, remember the final 2 years, the Jake Delhomme era?
Yeah.
They went from 12 to 8 to 1 or something. That's when they wound up with Cam Newton.
Yep.
I just think this team, I got them at 7 wins as well. Same as last year, but last place instead of first place.
Yes, last place.
I think there's too many holes, and you bet safe on the under here. There is no way this team's going to win 9 games. They're just simply not better.
Speaking of last place, I think the next team up, we probably agree is going to be last place in their division. I certainly think so.
Nope.
They were a year ago. All right, the Chicago Bears 5-11 in a season where everything went wrong.
Yep.
I got them at 6-10. I mean, baby steps up from where they were last year, but again, with everything, again, what's the most important pivot for any franchise? It's the quarterback, and for the Bears, It's a perennial question mark there because Jay Cutler, on paper, is a guy that should be at least on the Eli Manning, Joe Flacco level and hasn't shown the consistency to be able to do that. A year ago this time, he had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. This year, he was supposed to have Alshon Jeffrey, Kevin White, downgrade just because of White's inexperience at the pro level, although he, I think, was the most physically talented receiver to come out in the draft this year. Then Kevin White goes down for the season. So I look at it, they have so many different changes that they need to make. They've needed to make upgrades defensively. This is a project for John Fox. This is not going to be a quick turnaround. At 6-10, I think that's as good of a year as you can expect out of the Bears. If they do better like you think, that's just gravy for them.
You know that I kind of view these teams as like stocks, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just like to I like to sell high on them and I like to buy low on them. Last year, this was a team that everyone loved going in the season, and I talked myself into it. I said 10-6 and they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah,
and I'm very upset that I was talked into that because there was really no reason to expect that. They went 0-4 in games decided by 7 or less. The Mark Trestman era was an unmitigated disaster, as much as I think he was a nice man, and I think it should have worked better. They were awful at home the last 2 years.
right.
Just awful. Teams shouldn't be that bad at home like they were.
They kept costing me on the weekly picks because I kept waiting for that to turn around, and it just never did.
Yeah, I'll get the record in a second, but like I said, they were 0-4 in games decided by 7 points or less. Now, a little misleading is that 4 of their 5 wins were by exactly 8 points.
Okay.
So they only had one impressive win. It was against Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
In Atlanta, believe it or not. And at the time, they were 3-3, and things were looking okay. But back to my stock analogy, I just think this is a buy low team. John Fox has done a great job in his 2 previous stops, Carolina and Denver, at improving the defense pretty dramatically in year 1.
And as
He's got a very low floor. He's got a very low floor to work with here because Chicago's defense was abhorrent last year. They couldn't stop anything.
And as you said, there is a lot of volatility defensively.
Yes,
year to
there's
year.
a lot. And
it's the bullpen of the NFL.
Yeah, and they've got talent on offense, despite the White injury. They've got talent on offense. It didn't work with Mark Trestman, which was odd. I think it'll work a little better with Adam Gase. I, believe it or not, was almost ready to call for this to be a wild card team, just because I thought that there was that much room to improve, and I'm also not as high on a certain sleeper team in this division as I know you are, and I know a lot of other people are. But I kind of got cold feet toward the end. The Kevin White injury, I look at the Cutler situation. I don't know if that's there's got to be a mutual parting of the ways,
right?
Unless if things really go well this year. I'm going to say 8-8. I like over 7.
Okay.
There's heavy juice on the under. I just think that people are kind of like upset at this team because they burned them last year.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just a lot of room to grow. I don't think they were as bad as they showed last year. Although, quite frankly, they were pretty bad at times. Let me look up. What is their 2-year home record?
While you're doing that, I will just simply note, because you talked about Adam Gase, so I'll note this in passing. He was very impressive in his previous job. That, of course, consisted of getting coffee and donuts for Peyton Manning every morning. That was pretty much the extent of it.
But, hey, let me tell you something. Tim Tebow needed a little bit more than coffee and donuts.
Was he the O coordinator for him, too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I
didn't remember that he went as far back in Denver as that because he's a very young guy. But, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll give you that. But
so Chicago at home, I wanted to bring this up. They were – they were actually – maybe it was ATS because it's funny with the weekly getting back. By the way, spoiler alert, I love the Bears as a home dog in Week 1 against Green Bay. They're getting like 6.5.
Wow.
I love that pick. Spoiler alert for for the next time we talk, we do the Week 1 picks. I am all over the Bears. Plus 6.5 in Week 1 at home?
Counterpoint to much of what you've already said, though, at the risk of oversimplifying.
No, I will explain that momentarily.
No. But here's my counterpoint. Number 2 wide receiver, Eddie Royal.
Yeah.
Hello?
Well, Eddie Royal's had some good games through the years.
Sporadically, yes. He's got to play 16 as the number 2 wide receiver, Kyle Ross. No place to hide, buddy.
The Bears, they just – it's one of those things. Look, there's another team where I'm going to make a lot of well, there's a team that you're going to make a lot of these, well, I just think everything's going to keep improving type deals. I'm going to have one of those too. I just think, I know these dreaded numbers that you are so afraid of.
You and your liberal man.
Yeah, I hate those numbers. I mean, I don't care that unemployment numbers are down. I don't like Barack Obama.
Well, I don't trust the government numbers.
Oh, Jesus, here we go. They were, oh, God, why do I have day games in here? Hold on one second.
Those official government employment numbers have not been vetted through InfoWars, Kyle Ross.
Come on. Stop that. I'm trying to look up the Bears' damn home record.
And I'm distracting you with my Alex Jones stuff.
It was 2-6 last year.
Okay.
Teams they'll pick up a few more wins. I feel comfortable saying 8 wins for the Chicago Bears.
Okay. 8 wins.
As I horribly navigate my computer here.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, I think
I'm okay.
About blasted our way through them.
Yes, nothing more to say.
Up next to the
best case scenario, Jay Cutler has an okay year and they can get rid of him somehow. Because I do think long term, this is a rebuild.
That contract blows,
the current roster is not a team that's going to win playoff games.
Here's the other thing too, and again, I'm not. There's very little to compare with the Chicago Bears to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but something that I noticed a couple of years ago, this extension that Anderson Varejao got. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, and this is, of course, before LeBron came back, and you didn't know when they were going to be any good. But I'm going, by the time this team's any good again, he's not going to be worth the money, So it's the same thing with Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler's been in the league a number of years now. He's north of 30, I believe.
Yes.
I mean, what
shall we talk about another? Yes, and how interesting that we will now segue into another quarterback who's north of 30, who, no matter what you think of him, has been much better than Jay Cutler in his career. Last year proved it. Last year was a definitive I am better than Jay Cutler year by this man.
The fact that it took last year for that to be the case, it's not as wide of a margin as you'd like to believe it is, Kyle Ross. But Tony Romo,
it always was as a person, I believe.
Jay Cutler's a dick, so I can't. Tony Romo's just a goof. Jay Cutler's a dickhead. So
Tony Romo's just a guy who likes to have fun and throw his cap on backwards.
It's a goofball. But anyways, he's not an a-hole like Jay Cutler, allegedly. But anyways, the Dallas Cowboys 12-4 a year ago.
Not a lot of people saw that coming. They were a team that were much better than I thought they would be.
Not me and you, and you always overrated them. You didn't even see that coming. I got them 9-7. That's a borderline playoff thing here this year. I will say this. I do not fall into the same regard as everybody else here in terms of thinking, because, again,
here we go.
They put a lot of city miles on DeMarco Murray.
Yes, they did.
And it was knowing that he was probably going to walk in the offseason. It was like what the Brewers did with CC Sabathia late in 2008.
I remember you saying this last year. I liked that point.
So my thing is, unless they're dumb enough, which I don't believe they're going to be, to go with McFadden as the lead back over Randall, it's a fall off from where from what Murray did last year. But it's not going to be the fall off the cliff that people think it is.
Oh, I like where your head's at. I thought,
off.
when you see, it's kind of funny because when you become part of an issue that I'm trying to fight a little bit in recent years. This happens when you work from home a lot. Is that you're able to block out what you don't want to hear.
Tell me about it.
Yes, and it's funny, like when you're like, oh, what other people are saying, and it's when you say what other people are saying, I assume you mean like the 6 people that I read, like with football, not like the common person. I could not agree with you more on the Dallas running game. It's funny that people look at what they have now in the backfield, and they're like, oh my God, that's so much worse than DeMarco Murray. But if they had DeMarco Murray, all we would be talking about right now is, well, he's going to regress because he had so many carries.
Sure.
So I don't think the key is, and I alluded to this with, I can't remember who in the AFC, but I definitely alluded to it, is, it was the Browns. It's so big. When you have a great offensive line, that can turn an average running back into a decent-looking running back.
Right.
And there ain't no team in the league that's got a better offensive line than how about them Cowboys.
Yep.
It is, without question, number one with a bullet.
Right.
And Tony Romo, for his faults, and he does have many, has always been a borderline top 10 quarterback throughout his career. They have one of the best receivers in the game in Dez Bryant. He can be a knucklehead, but he's one of the best receivers in the game. The defense is not good. And they were a lucky defense last year in that they weren't on the field that much and they were opportunistic. This team clearly will not win as many games as they did last year. They were 8-0 on the road, for God's sake, last year. Guess what they're not doing this year? going 8-0 on the road.
True.
But I'm with you. I got 9-7. I got them in the playoffs as a wild card.
9-7 could make the playoffs. That's not outrageous.
I just think that, you know what's funny? Is organizationally, they're doing things right now. Letting Murray walk.
Right.
Drafting on the offensive line. Yeah, they're doing smarter things now. It makes you think that Jerry Jones may not be holding all the cards anymore.
Well, the funny thing is, too, that's the same thing that's happening. We'll get to this later on in Washington. I'm not bullish on them for this year, but Dan Snyder hired an actual very smart GM.
Agreed.
And so there's hope for any franchise. When you look at Jerry Jones and Dan Snyder wising up, if they stay the course, which we know Jerry Jones will because he's had a taste of success. We don't know if Dan Snyder will. Dan Snyder's he's the kind of guy at the first sign of trouble could abandon the whole thing. But the Cowboys, I agree with you. Somehow or another, are basically on the right path here. But they will regress.
They also draw, obviously, the first place schedule. That means they get Seattle and Green Bay.
Yeah,
so
that's going to be tough.
It's regression, but it's funny. We were talking about that group of 3 in the AFC.
Yeah.
San Diego, Miami, and KC.
Yep.
2 of these are going to be
They're in the wild
teams.
card bracket. Yeah.
There's 3
division.
clear regression. There's 3 teams that made the playoffs last year in the NFC
Mm-hmm.
that are clear. That at least to me, I know Arizona. You obviously disagree. That are clearly going to win fewer games this year. Arizona, Dallas, and Detroit.
Yeah.
But all of them are coming from a place being 11 or more wins where regression can still mean the playoffs. And Dallas is the one that I'm banking on making the playoffs.
Okay.
Again, for those 3. They were 4-0 in non-conference games. That won't be repeated. Won't repeat the 8-0 on the road. But they were only 4-4 at home.
Right.
So they should pick up a game there.
Well, and it's funny. Of the teams that you reference, you have Detroit, who's up next year in our examination, 11-5 a year ago. I got them at 8-8 this year. The Dallas Cowboys avenging, and it took them a long time, but that first big playoff loss of the Jimmy Johnson era, that ugly loss in 1991.
Yes, I'm sure that was on their mind.
Dallas got that monkey off their backs in the wild card round against Detroit. They were not able to do anything beyond that ultimately, but
well, they almost beat Green Bay. They took them to the wire. If it wasn't for some officiating that people didn't necessarily agree with.
Close doesn't count, kid. But
really?
as far as Detroit goes, again, you lose Ndamukong Suh off the defensive line, and that is a mammoth loss, both literally and figuratively. And again, though, offensively, I think they're in pretty good shape. I'm a big believer in the potential of Abdullah at running back and what he may be able to do.
He seems to be
there.
a little PBR-ish right now, doesn't he?
He kind of is.
It's one of those things where, people are looking like Sports Center the anchors were tripping over themselves that night at the 11 o'clock Sports Center to be like, first sleeper we've identified for your fantasy league.
Yeah, but you know what? Every year for the last 5 years, Joique Bell has been the most annoying sleeper at everybody's draft.
Okay,
so come on.
You like Abdul? I mean, the offensive line here not as good as it is in Dallas.
No, it's not as good as there. The wide receiving core, again, I expect close to a full bounce back from Megatron. He's got something to prove. He's the best wide receiver of his generation. With Tate on the other side, I think it's going to be very, very dangerous. I'm expecting a little bit more from Ebron here at tight end. He was invisible a year ago. I don't think that'll be the case twice. I see some good things coming here. It's become fashionable to bag on, we talked about before with Atlanta. Matty Ice, same thing with Matt Stafford. Matt
Stafford's not as good as Matt Ryan.
He's not.
He's not as good as Tony Romo either.
I slot Ryan higher. I'm not so sure I put him behind Romo, but Stafford's another one of these guys. Well, and you're somebody who's banged on Matty Ice a bunch over the years here. It's fashionable to bang on some of these guys for what they're not, and Matt Stafford's not as good as you think he is. Really? I don't know. I don't think he's...
I don't think he is. Well, I mean...
How many guys have thrown for 5,000 yards, for God's sake? And I don't care what kind of offense you're in.
Well, you know what? I don't think this offense was very good last year.
It wasn't the best in the league.
They scored 30. I thought this offense, I'll be honest with you, I categorize this offense as disappointing last year. I see a lot of games that were won by that defense.
They haven't had a lot of stability at running back, though, and there's a big carryover to the passing game.
Last year,
you said the O-line isn't that great.
They scored 7 points, 19 points, 14 points, 17 points, 6 points, 9 points, 16, 20, 20. in the playoffs. They had 20. There were a lot of games of 20 and under.
That
for the
makes
Lions
him
this year.
dangerous. Progression to the mean. He's
Yeah, but I don't-
due, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't think the offense is going to be as good as you do, and the defense is absolutely going to regress. It's interesting that a team that you think is going to win 3 fewer games this year, you were kind of complimentary to. This is a team like Cincinnati for me. They were very fortunate in close games.
Right.
This was a kind of lucky team. They beat. They had a 7-point win over the Jets. They had back-to-back 1-point wins over the Saints and Falcons that were very fortunate. A 4-point win over Miami. I watched that game. That was pretty lucky. So, oh my God. Then Minnesota, they will beat by 2. Chicago, they beat by 6. This is one of those teams that excelled in close games. So you want to talk about progression? I'll raise you some regression.
Well,
and it happened with the close loss in the playoffs.
Here's the thing. I agree with everything you're saying about luck. The reason that I'm putting over the offense the way that I am is I'm saying they were 11-5 a year ago. I got them 8-8 now. I think that will all be because the disproportionate good luck they had last year probably turns into bad luck because
Or
I
just evens
I
out.
think it's a wash in terms of the offense will be better, the defense will be worse in almost equal margins. The luck will go against them. They win 3 less games.
That's not a bad counterpoint.
Is that? Yeah, that's how I see it.
That's not a bad counterpoint.
I won you over. How about that? That doesn't happen much.
I do not like their schedule down the stretch. 3 road games, final 4 weeks.
Yep.
They'll also host Green Bay before that. Back-to-back Thursday games. Because they're a Thanksgiving team.
Yeah. 3
of their first 4 are on the road, too. San Diego, Minnesota, and Seattle.
Yeah.
Harder schedule this year because they finished in second. The division is not awesome, but tough. There's no gimmies, I don't think, in this division. Yeah, 8-8. I'm with you. They are pegged, by the way, win total of I think it's 8.5. It's down to 8. Actually, it was at 8.5 and down to 8.
Down to
I'm
8?
going to say 8.
Okay.
I'm going to say right on the nose. 8
Then
wins.
We all kind of think the same, I think, as far as how that goes. Also, in that division, next up in terms of the team to tackle here alphabetically, the Green Bay Packers.
And the team to tackle, and yes,
12-4 a year ago.
A hard team to tackle.
Yeah, they are. 10-6 this year. Again, until the Nelson pick, and I admit that it was more of a general sea change in my mind in terms of how I viewed the top teams in the league, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh, that
But
can
again,
be dangerous. That can be risky reacting to preseason injuries.
It's a consequential one.
It is. It is.
I mean, I don't want to be the guy that uses a fantasy term to describe an NFL thing, but when you lose a first-round fantasy football player, that generally translates into something very bad for your football team, Kyle Ross.
But you know what they also have on this team? The best quarterback in the league, according to both of us, Aaron Rodgers. I think he can make up for it.
And arguably the best number 2, who is a great number 1 in the absence of Nelson, in Randall Cobb. Devontae Adams, who a lot of people think can step up. Richard Rodgers at tight end. And again, counterpoint, because I think it was during the heyday of Jamarcus Finley that Jermichael Finley
Yes,
that they won the Super Bowl when he was out. They had like 15 players on the IR.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you were to be Green Bay Packer homer, you could even say, well, this is good luck. Look at what happened last time.
That's
we
fair.
haven't gotten over the hump since all the guys are on the IR.
I mean, that's flawed.
Is there anybody?
That's
is
very
everybody homer enough?
flawed.
We're better off without him. It's the Ewing theory. I think those people.
I like the Ewing theory.
Yeah, you would agree it doesn't apply to Jordy Nelson, however.
No.
They're not a better team without him. Look, they're an excellent team. The funny thing is, what I saw in the conference championship game is something that I expected
Was
to
that they
see
should have
throughout-
beaten Seattle if Mike McCarthy wasn't such a choking dog.
Yeah, a couple times, gone for it on the goal line, absolutely. But there are certain positions in football that I think can sort of be, if you use the military term of force multipliers. I thought that was the role Clinton Dix was going to play, because this is a team that didn't have a lot of cohesion defensively in the couple of years leading up to that. You saw it in the NFC Championship game. He was a beast, and that defense just benefited across the board from it. So that's the first taste of what I think they can do and what they can be going forward. I think Peppers still has a decent amount in the tank, at least somewhat here. But again, they'll win the division, but they scare me. And we're at the point now where, I mean, I think I've picked them to win the Super Bowl a couple times in recent years, and I know that they're, but like they couldn't get past San Francisco stylistically. I know that was always their out in the playoffs and whatever.
Seattle, who's a similar style, has been giving them issues as well.
It's just like, I understand that you want to go with either them or Seattle, and Seattle I can. Like, on the one hand, Seattle I can justify in terms of track record, but on the other hand, when's the last time somebody made the Super Bowl 3 years in a row? And in the case of Green Bay, it just boils down to, really? This is going to be their year? Well, there's a couple times the last couple of years it should have been their year and weren't. So I'm going to bet on weren't/won't again. Green Bay to win the division, not to win the conference.
I have a very interesting way to look at Green Bay.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people were picking this team to win the Super Bowl before the Nelson injury and are now rethinking that because of Jordan. I think that's very dangerous if you really like a team. And you're right, it's a significant injury. But, I mean, could he be back for the playoffs? I mean, I know they said he's out for the regular season.
Are we going to do this Rod Woodson thing again of, maybe we can shoot him up full of dopamine and,
Well, I mean, you're
are
telling
we
me
really
that
going to do that scenario?
I don't know. I'm not the team doctor. Don't get on my case. But here's what I think. I was predicting Green Bay to regress anyway this regular season before the Nelson injury, and it was harder to justify because the team did really look damn good on paper.
Right.
Now I've got my justification. In addition to some of your favorites' numbers, in the regular season last year, they were 5-0 in games decided by 7 points or less. They jumped from 8 to 12 wins, which I called. I actually nailed this team right on the head last year.
Asterisk.
Oh, yeah.
They were a garbage team without Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But still, I mean, I feel I'm going to pat myself on the back. I said they were going to be 12-4 last year and lose to Seattle in the NFC Championship game. That's what they did.
So you said they were going to be what they should have been the previous year if they'd had Aaron Rodgers the whole way. Congratulations, Nostradamus.
Thank you. They also led the league in turnover differential last year.
Okay.
So there are signs pointing down in the regular season.
Yep.
They do get to host Seattle finally. It's been a long time since Seattle had to come to Lambeau. Maybe the last time was that Matt Hasselbeck playoff game.
By the way, I want to point this out. I said this a year ago when I picked Seattle over Green Bay in the NFC Championship game before the season started. I said...
so who are you, Nostradamus?
I did get that right.
So did I.
Well, what I said was, in a coin flip between the two teams, the fact that Seattle hosts the regular season game is why I will pick them to host the NFC Championship game and to win it. So I'm giving credence to what you're saying. Them not having to go to Seattle, them playing Seattle there, if it comes down to those two teams, that could be big. Surely Green Bay would much rather... Again, they came shockingly close to beating Seattle on the road, but they didn't. In the end, they didn't. And this year, they get them at Lambeau. I'm giving you credit and saying that could mean something.
Well, I also last year predicted a kind of slow start for them and then to explode in the second half of the season. That's the way their year played out. I'm going to say that it's a maybe even slower start this regular season, but the end of the year, the December schedule is pretty manageable. They could conceivably go 4-0. I'm going to only say 10-6 for Green Bay like you.
Okay.
But, as we'll get to at the end of this podcast, I see bigger things on the horizon in the playoffs.
Okay. Well, I see that they're going to make the playoffs and go a certain distance here, but I'll tell you what, I could just as easily pick to win the NFC North because I also have 10 wins.
Somebody cracked this man open a PBR, tall boy.
Same record. The Minnesota Vikings this year going 10-6, improving off of last year's 7-9 record. Mike Zimmer doing a rebuild in record time here in
goodness!
In Minnesota.
He had 1 year and he's doing a record rebuild.
They're doing some fine drafting defensively here.
That's fine. It takes years. It takes a couple years for that to work, though.
Excellent. Anthony Barr is just going to be. I
liked that pick.
One of the talents of this generation, quite frankly. I think.
Wow, that's pretty strong.
Could be the case. But you add Adrian Peterson here. You subtract the question mark of that.
I am not that high on that return. I'm going to tell you that right now.
He's not going to be a 2,000-yard guy, but I think he's going to be a 1,200-yard guy. I mean, that's worth something. You talk about PBR, one of the great sleepers out there at wide receiver this year, Charles Johnson. I think that's a guy who could really be counted on to get some things done. And I'll tell you what, I've been very consistent. You know me. I never wavered on Teddy Bridgewater. I said he should have been picked for the Browns instead of Johnny Manziel.
I agree with you.
When the Browns passed him by, I said in wonderment, when did we get so good that we could turn our noses up at Teddy Bridgewater? Because if you remember, that whole year it was like, are we going to be bad enough to get Teddy Bridgewater? Are we going to be bad enough to be high enough? And then, of course, we end up being lower there in the draft. We pass them by twice. Typical Browns. Teddy Bridgewater, again, and this is the level that I like to use for quarterbacks. The whole Eli Manning, Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger. Good enough to win you a Super Bowl if you have a lot of great stuff around you. Guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, not as dependent on that. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't put on that tier.
Oh, thank God.
No. Hear me out. He can be, and maybe even by this year, on the Eli Flacco Roethlisberger tier. That I think he can do that much for you. There's been so much emphasis on what the guy can't do.
Oh, look,
he's
the best of the
when
four.
He came out?
He's the best of the four that were drafted last year. There's no doubt in my mind. But you know what?
But other than
that doesn't
Derek
mean he's awesome.
Other than Derek Carr,
or an
that's damning
all-pro
with faint praise, and he deserves better than that.
He's a very good quarterback, and you're right.
Yes.
The idea that Blake Bortles was
Yeah.
picked way in front of him, and Johnny Manziel was in the Browns traded up to pick Manziel, not Bridgewater. That's dumb. I disagree with it completely.
Yeah.
Teddy Bridgewater's the best of the four,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean he is the next Aaron Rodgers. I have a question for you. How many teams with a winning record did Minnesota beat last year?
Probably not many, based on the way you're phrasing this.
I'll give you a clue.
2.
It's 0.
0.
Yes.
Okay.
Their wins last year were over St. Louis,
Okay.
Atlanta, Tampa in overtime, Washington by 3, Carolina, who won a division but had a losing record, the Jets in overtime,
Okay.
and the Bears by 4 at home.
Okay. Then, based on picking them to win 10 games, then obviously I'm picking them to sweep the board against bad teams. And
They do not have the last place schedule that they did last year.
True that.
I hear you. And, this was a team where the bandwagon began to swell very quickly after last year because Bridgewater played a lot better down the stretch.
Sometimes for good reason, though. You're quick to everybody else is on them. Maybe because it's that obvious, Kyle.
Well, I'll give you a clue. I was actually thinking about this today, which shows where my life is at. Shows how married life gets you. You think about podcasts from 4 years ago or 3 years ago that you do with your buddy. Oh, those were the days. But I think it was the first year you and I actually did this little program.
Okay.
And a division rival of Minnesota's, Detroit,
Okay.
had improved 1 year. And I was like, teams don't generally improve 2 years in a row. And you were on them to make this was the ill-fated Jim Schwartz Lions.
Right.
And they did improve. You were right that year.
Yeah.
I just don't think that this is a great team. It's an okay team, but with a capital O and a capital K.
Okay.
I think that they're going to plateau the next couple of years. I think that the schedule, if I recall, and for some reason I'm on H, I have not been flipping here. That was poor.
That'll happen.
Yes. Okay, that'll happen sometimes. Yeah, that married life. Okay. All right. Where is my Minnesota Vikings handy-dandy schedule for 2015? You think I should have it up? I have their 2014 schedule up, which is wonderful, but where is their...
I can...
Oh, I have it. Hold on. Is it...
Well,
I'm
going to pull it up on my screen also here, too.
This is weird how they did it. Okay. Oh, it's not as hard as I thought. Oh, okay. Maybe it was some other team I was thinking of. I think it was the Rams, maybe. But anyway, I just think that this is a team that is destined not to take the leap that everyone wants it to. Because I hear what you're saying. Mike Zimmer did a great job. He made the defense a lot better. But the idea that they're going to get better is you're sort of presupposing that every player is going to get better. When does that really happen? I think it's optimistic. I don't hate the Minnesota Vikings. It's not like Arizona when they make me mad because they overachieve. I just think that the bandwagon is a little too full, and they just seem to be that trendy team. And here's the other issue. You love baseball, right?
Yes.
And you love Cleveland, right?
Yes.
So certainly you know that the...
Although I loathe the Dolans.
Okay, well, you're not alone in those three things. You will recall that the Cleveland Indians at the start of the season were a very trendy pick.
I picked them to win the American League, notwithstanding loathing the Dolans, because with their front four pitchers, I thought in a bad American League, if they and I'll say it today, if they made the playoffs, which they won't, but if they made the playoffs with those 4 pitchers, would you bet against them?
I'm with you.
That was my reasoning.
I'm a betting man, but
Yeah.
Listen good.
Okay.
What concerned me about the Indians
Mm-hmm.
concerns me about the Minnesota Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this team that everybody loves, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what the Indians' win total was in Vegas before the season?
What?
84.5.
I
And
kind of questioned that.
And
yeah.
I kept telling everyone, I'm like, if this team is so good and is going to win the American League, why is everyone and their mother not betting over 84.5
So
right
what's
now?
the win total here?
7. It opened up at.
7?
And it's up to 8 now.
Okay.
But I think Vegas is going to make some money off the hipsters this year. I got the Minnesota Vikings 7-9. Sorry.
7-9.
Yep.
Okay. Wow.
I think that there's several teams, we talked about Atlanta already, that are going, and there's a couple more that I've got some my off the wall picks. You've made your 2 now, kind of
Sure.
Arizona, Minnesota. My 2 are still to come.
Okay.
That are going to improve. I just think there's only so many teams that can improve in the NFC, and I like the Bears a little bit more than you. I just don't think that there's anything to suggest that the Vikings take that next leap.
Okay.
Unless if I'm wrong and everybody's better and it's the Adrian Peterson, if he's somewhat close to the Peterson of 2 years ago. I mean, he's not going to be close to the Peterson of 3 years ago. That's impossible. I just think he's old. And it's a bad situation. Do you really want him around? That was kind of a toxic situation last year.
Well, whipping his kid in the nards.
Well,
none of us can,
obviously, that's a toxic. I'm just talking about the relationship he has with his team.
Oh,
with his
okay,
child. Like,
yeah.
Yes, obviously, with his child. I mean, yes, I don't think Adrian Peterson is
Jesus,
going to
yeah.
win. I don't think he's going to win the Titus O'Neill Father of the Year
No,
award anytime
probably
soon.
not. I was like, what? What? Whipping the kid in the nards with a stick?
How liberal of you.
Oh, yeah. Because, a right-wing point of view equates to child abuse. I would expect nothing less of you, Kyle Ross.
Isn't it?
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the periodic table of elements.